Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday As Bill Sees It meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Mary B from Iowa, who has kindly come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing, or if you'd like to ask a question. So yeah, thank you so much, Mary. It's wonderful to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, all. My name's Mary, and I am an alcoholic, and so thankful to be here. I'd like to begin this morning with a prayer, and it's our fifth step prayer. And the prayer goes like this: God, I thank you from the bottom of my heart that I know you better. Help me become aware of anything I have omitted discussing with another person. Help me to do what is necessary to walk a free man at last. And that is from page 75 of our big book. And I am so thankful to be here with all of you, and thankful to the loving God of my understanding. And so I want to share 3 words with you that have great significance in my life. Those words are grace, love, and mercy. And so I'd like to remember those words throughout this share and continuously in my life. And so I've learned to begin with what it was like, and then what happened and what it's like now. And so what it was like, I, as many of you, come from an alcoholic home where there was a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of rage, terror, all of those words, and fear, incredible fear, and so much abuse. And I did not know God in my life. I did not meet God until coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. As a kid, I went to church, but I had no understanding of anything. It was an hour or 2 out of the insanity that was going on in my home. And so at a very young age, I developed panic disorder because I was living in what I call a war zone. I never knew what was going to happen from one minute to the next. And there was no trust, certainly no love that was shown. And with my mom trying to survive and raise 6 of us, with my alcoholic father who spent most of his life at that time living in a bedroom, it was very, very frightening to grow up like that. And so being so terrified of living in that home, I learned at a young age that it was not okay to show any feelings. I learned that it was not okay to say no. And at that young age, I learned that I had to be, although it was impossible, a perfectionist. There was no room for making any mistakes anywhere. And I remember as a child wishing the bedroom door would not open and that my father would die. You know, that was the healing from that was to come from the rooms and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was the oldest of 6, and I lived in foster care for the first 2 years of my life. And, you know, I came to realize that any ability to love came from living in that foster home, and and it came from the grace of God. You know what happened? What happened was, growing up like that, my defenses were already up. And here's the thing, and I want to share this with you because this is so important in my life. Not having felt loved, not having felt safe, feeling so abandoned from such a young age, from going from a foster home with foster parents where there was love to a family where there was a constant war going on. At a very young age, I sought to be loved and to get attention for years later through other people and other ways in my life. And so the word codependency is a part of my story. It is a part of who I am. And it is something that I had to address, or I was going to die from it. My need for love and security came from other people, through other people, and my need to escape myself came through alcohol. I was to learn later on that codependency, that need to be loved and secure and wanted and approved of, preceded my alcoholism, but my alcoholism actually saved my life. And what that means is that the alcohol took me out of myself. It took me out of all the abuse that went on. It took me out of the shame and the guilt for the things that I did and the harms that I caused others until it stopped working. My fear of abandonment took me to people and places that it's very hard to believe that I went to today. And so my first drink happened when I was about 16 years old. And I was always shaking in my skin. I was terrified of people. We did not entertain anyone. We did not, if anything, if the ground could open and I could sink into it when I was outside with other kids when I was younger, I wish that would have happened, but it didn't. And so at 16, when I had that first drink at a club, wow, the shaking stopped, the fear of people stopped. For the first time in my life, I felt what I would call normal, because I never felt normal. I always felt like an outsider. And for the first time, I was okay being in my own skin. And little did I know, as much as I didn't want to be anything like my father, I became exactly like he was. I became the alcoholic that I so incredibly feared. Little did I know that first drink would lead to almost 30-something years of drinking, of escaping, of not being present in my life emotionally. I was there physically in my life, but I was not present. I have 2 sons. Bruce and I have 3 sons, and I was unable to be present for the sons. Emotionally, I was gone, and I would do anything to keep someone from leaving me. And I did do just about anything. I had 3 marriages. a long-term relationship that went on, mostly in my head, because that person was unable in his own life to be present. I would say the only great thing that came from that was one of my sons, one of our sons. One of our sons, and so I spent most of my years drinking, making the same mistakes over and over again. I remember an evening sitting at a bar with someone, and that person wanted to go with me afterwards to a motel, and I did not want to do that. I was ashamed of myself, my body, how I looked, who I was. I was a little girl in a grown-up body, and I was so ashamed that I drank and I drank and I drank. And I ended up getting violently ill outside of that bar. And I ended up in the very place that I didn't want to be, with my mother watching my son, and knowing that there was going to be a price to pay when I went back home at that point. And there was. She was furious with me, and with good reason. But I couldn't stop doing what I was doing. I had to have a drink to go to a store. I had to have a drink if I were to meet somebody for dinner. Always had to have a drink or some other substance. It was incapable of being just myself, because I didn't know who myself was. I had never seen sobriety until coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what happened after years of making the same mistakes over and over again, going from one person to the other, not being there for my children, almost losing my life, allowing myself to be beat to death from a half an inch of my life, allowing myself to do that, and then lying after somebody beat me almost to death when my son was 3 months old. I lied to the police, and I said somebody walked into my home. It was a burglary, and it wasn't at all. I was so afraid of being left that I lied. And guess what? I went back to the same behavior and to the same person in my life at that time. And all during this time, I was drinking and doing other substances. I couldn't get far enough away from myself and out of myself. And so, God had been there all along. And I did not know this. God was there. As a little girl, I remember, and I'll just share this because it's so key in my life. As a little girl, I remember thinking to myself, my name is so plain. And God spoke to me and he said, Mary, that's the name of Mary is the name of my son's mother. And for the first time, I didn't feel so plain, but I didn't know it was God touching my life then. And so after years of the same behaviors, after years of drinking and lying and cheating and stealing and hurting innocent people around me, my children, God touched my life again. And what he did was he brought me he brought me to some outside help. He brought me to another program before Alcoholics Anonymous, and I will say the name of that program because it is a huge part of my life today. He brought me to Al-Anon, and there I started to identify with people sharing things about their growing up years and their family. And I had a beautiful sponsor in that program that would talk to me every morning at early hours because I could barely get out of bed in the morning. I was in withdrawal every morning. And I want to share that I had a relationship with my mother that was so toxic. This is important for me to share this because I want to tie that up at the end with where I am today. So I had this beautiful sponsor who would listen to me in the mornings, and I'm trembling and I'm shaking and I can't stop. I don't know how to live. I've never seen sobriety. And she said to me, Mary, move a muscle, change a thought. She said to me, Mary, have some food in your stomach. Mary, take a shower. Get in some water to calm your body. And then one day she said to Mary, I suggest you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And guess what happened? While I was at my Al-Anon meetings, I was also at adult children of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And there were two men there that were alcoholics, and they shared that. And I remember being upset that they were at that meeting. This is not for you. But they were the ones that I most identified with. And when they weren't there, I was very upset and I missed them. And so I started coming to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I tried. I went in for some treatment at a place called the Karen Foundation in Pennsylvania. And it was for the families of alcoholics. And I was there with so many people that were in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I heard their stories. And to be able to participate in this program, I had to be free of any alcohol or substances 2 weeks before. And I tried. I was on prescription pills for a long time. I gave those pills to the people there. And I participated in that program. And in that program, the Band-Aid was ripped off. And I was sick as a dog. And one of the counselors said to me, because I stopped everything, he said to me, Mary, you could have gone into convulsions and died. But I didn't. And why? Because of God's grace. Because of God's mercy. Because of God's love. He had a plan that I knew nothing about. And so I did that program for 5.5 days, and I left there. And it was suggested I go to AA meetings. And so God brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings when I insisted that my ex-husband go get help for his problem. Little did I see my own problem at that point. But I took the suggestions, and I came for a few meetings, and a woman took me under her belt and fed me some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at her place. And you know what? I was so desperate and in so much withdrawal, I started calling doctors and hospitals to get something to help me to stop shaking. I probably should have been in a hospital, but I wasn't. And And shortly after that, I did go into a hospital. I was getting treatment at the National Council of Alcoholism. And I got a counselor outside from there, and I started seeing her. And but I never talked about the drinking with her. But she knew. You know, when I drank, I abused others emotionally. And I shared this because this is part of what was in my fifth step. I abused others, my children, and other people in my life. I said and did things. And there was one morning when my son did nothing, my younger son did nothing, and I found myself raising my hands to him. And then I turned around to my ex-husband and said, "Why didn't you stop me? I did the very thing that my father did to me." And this is what alcoholism does. This is where it leads. This is where codependency leads. Anyway, I started coming to Alcoholics Anonymous for a few meetings, and then I couldn't stop shaking, and I went into the hospital. And their meetings were brought in. I came to meetings out here in Minneapolis, to the hospital here. And I remember being so afraid to travel alone and be on a plane. And God, the loving God of my understanding, put a woman on that plane with children who was so kind that she spoke to me and took me out of myself at that point. And I remember having to change planes and calling home and calling my son at that point, my younger son, because I needed to be grounded. I was so frightened and felt so alone. And I stayed in that hospital. I got treatment for 3 weeks. I didn't understand a single thing about it. Did a written first step, did what I could to try and escape that. And I got released and went back home. And I started going back to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings again. And I remember one day standing in my bedroom and thinking about taking my life because I could no longer drink. I could no longer pop pills anymore. I could no longer do all of the things that I had been doing. And God said to me, your child cannot come home and find you dead. And so I began to attend the meetings again, and this time I stayed. And that was in April of 1987, and by the grace of God, I have not had to leave Alcoholics Anonymous again. And so what it's like, I learned from the beginning. I heard people say, get a sponsor. I didn't know what a sponsor was. And I learned it's someone that you'll talk to individually who will take me through the 12 steps. And I started to go to a meeting every single day. And I took a service commitment. I was in the kitchen for 2 years cleaning out coffee pots. I managed to continue keeping my job, taking care of an elderly gentleman. And I started working the steps. And I learned early on not to keep secrets anymore, to talk about what was going on. And I've had several sponsors through the years. I've learned how to be present in my life today. And I learned that I had the first 4 steps had to be in my life. It was here in Alcoholics Anonymous that I recognized and identified that I am an alcoholic. The stories may be different, but the patterns of behavior and the feelings are very similar. And so I had to find a loving God of my understanding. And that God came to me. That God came to me. And there's a beautiful reading in Came to Believe that I just want to share with you, because this is how this helped me so much. And it was from Came to Believe. God found me. I believe that God found me more than I found him. It was similar to watching a child walk. He falls down again and again, but it is better not to try to help him until he comes to realize that he cannot do it alone and extends his hand. I had gotten myself into a position where I had no other place to turn. I was at a point of almost complete despair. Then and only then did I honestly and simply ask God to help me. He came to me instantly, and I could feel his presence even as I do at this moment. And that's so true. I came in here in complete and utter despair, and as willing as only the dying could be to have the merciless obsession lifted. And it was during my fifth step. You know what? And I learned that I had to do a thorough fourth step. And I learned that I didn't do it alone. Each time I've worked the step, and I still continue today, I ask God to help me to be honest, to lead me through it. And I learned in my fifth step, that I was a garden variety alcoholic. And oh, how I needed to hear that, because at a few years into my sobriety, I said to my sponsor one day, I don't know if I'm alcoholic. And she said to me, Mary, why don't you go out and drink some more every day at the same time, and then come back and tell me about it. Let me know. And I looked at her and I said, are you absolutely out of your mind? Because it was so hard to get sober and to stay sober. It took a long time. And so I continue to do these steps and to live these steps in my life. And how is that in my life today? Well, the fifth step prepares me for the steps that come afterwards, where the healing happens, where the surrendering happens. You know, I was recently talking with my sponsor, and I learned something new. We not only surrender each day, but then we go deeper. And so I go deeper and I abandon myself to the care of God as I understand him today. And it was through that fourth and that fifth step that I came to see who I really am. I'm not a bad person. I'm a sick person trying to get well. And those things like low self-esteem and shame and guilt, all of those things, all of those behaviors and those feelings are not who I am today. I'm a child of God today. I am an alcoholic today. I'm no longer ashamed of who and what I am today, because God brought me here. And he said, my child, I don't want you suffering anymore. And I don't want you hurting anybody anymore. Hurting others, hurting my children, hurting the people that I was married to in my life. He told me, I love you. And at the end of one of my fifth steps, the most amazing thing happened, when I looked at my sponsor and I said, I never meant to hurt anybody. She looked at me and she said, Mary, all you ever wanted was to be loved. And I was in tears. I thought to myself, finally, someone understands me. Finally, someone knows. And what I didn't know at that time when she said that, it is the love of God. It is the grace of God and the forgiveness of God who understands me, God who forgives me, God through his grace and his mercy, who said to me, no more, my daughter. I love you, and I have a purpose for your life. The reason and the purpose being that you will turn around and help another alcoholic. You will share your story, no longer in shame, because I didn't ask for what happened in the early years. It was the disease of alcoholism. And it's not just about drinking. The ism is the I self in me. And what I learned today is when I am irritable, restless, and discontented, I know to call somebody today. I know to turn to God and say, come, Holy Spirit, come. I don't know what to do with this, with what's going on in my life right now. And I share it with God, with another human being. And I tell the truth today. And my loving sponsor has shown me something today, how to take an inventory in a simple 3-step column, where I write down in that first column who or what it is I'm upset about or resentful with. And then the second column is why am I holding on to this? I look at that. What am I getting out of this? Usually it's somebody's not doing something. I'm putting myself in a victim mode again, or I'm expecting or judging. They're not doing it the way I think, controlling. And then that third column is, what would God have me do or be? And there's the solution. God helps me to see that other person from a whole other set of eyes, from a place of love and grace and compassion, a place of understanding, because there, but for the grace of God, go I when I'm judging another person. And so there's the solution. And I become entirely ready to let God, have God remove these thoughts and these feelings. And I can now be free. So this 5th step, which leads to 6 and 7 and all the steps beyond that, are the healing, are the grace steps, are the love and the mercy steps. I want to share with you that last year my mom died in October. And it was amazing because God brought us back together through these steps. And for the last 4 years of her life, we were closer than we ever were. I did not have to share with her because my mom has the disease of alcoholism as a family member. She had that disease. She didn't drink, but she did have a pill addiction. And I used to, and she was, well, it was miserable. It was a war with her, between her and I. And I had to become the mom in my life to my siblings. And so I did all I could to avoid anything with her. And here's the other part of this. This was the codependency. I tried so hard to get her to love me, to like me, to approve of me. She couldn't do those things because she was the daughter of an alcoholic father and a gambler. She had nothing to give, but I went to this person expecting that. And God, through these steps, healed this relationship. And I got to be with my mother at her deathbed. Despite all that was going on with my siblings, who today are not talking, the majority of them are not talking to me, because God had another plan about her, how her end of life would go, and I stayed with that, followed that plan with other loving members in my family. So I got to say goodbye to my mom with one of my sons sitting there. And I got to tell her, Mom, you're so beautiful. And I got to tell her, I love you. And I got to tell her, I'll see you on the other side. This is the grace of God, the love and the mercy of God, and the fellowship and the results of the steps in this program. And it was to be quite a while after she passed that I would stop beating myself up for making a decision to follow God. When I stood outside of my mom's her room the morning she died, and I didn't know which way to go. Do we cremate her, or do we give her a full funeral, which my nephew and sons wanted to do? And God gave me the word love. And I knew right then and there, love. The answer was there. And we gave my mom a beautiful funeral together with family, sons, my husband. And I have no regrets about that. So I share with you that God has been present in my life, but I had to get sober. I had to surrender to God and to the steps in this program. I had to surrender, and then I have to abandon myself daily to the care of God as I understand Him. God was there when our son was in the Marine Corps, and I thought I'd never see him again. And He gave me beautiful, beautiful words. He said, Mary, if he doesn't come home, he will be with me, and there's no greater place to be. God gave me those same words when one of our sons tried to take his life. God, He's so loving and so grace-filled and so full of mercy. No longer do I have to escape. The steps today, and especially that fifth step, that inventory step, and the steps afterwards, help me to surrender to the love, the grace, and the mercy of God. And they take me out of myself. And when I can see self and get out of self, oh, how beautiful the world is today. And I no longer resent anybody. Today I can feel compassion and pray for them. I'm not perfect today, and that's okay. There is no perfection. But I arise each day to love and serve God. And I'd like to finish with this. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. And today I thank God that I can see what I could not see now that I can see. I thank God. I thank Him for all of you. I thank Him for my beautiful sponsor in this program and my other programs, which I run through every time God opens up a door. So thank you all, and God bless you. There's no longer a need to drink, only for God. Thank you very much.